Hey, online family. In just a few moments, you're going to experience a online sermon. And honestly, Lane, I didn't think I was ever going to do another look at the camera online kind of a sermon. I thought COVID was done. I'm in South Texas. Well, not really, but Central Texas.
Quite a bit further south than Louisville.
A whole lot further. And so we do hope that you are staying safe. And we thought we'd come in two different kind of parts. So this is kind of the intro to welcome you in, and hopefully you've gotten your coffee and your maybe even still in your jammies. I don't take that too terribly far, but you're still in your jammies, and that you're sitting on your couch and you're staying safe and warm.
Yeah, it's kind of a different thing. Of course, our weather is just a fraction of what it looks like currently in Louisville. As we record this, it's Friday afternoon. Some of the weather has already hit some of these places further north, but we just don't handle it as well. We don't have, I think I read something that there's like 12 ice trucks, snow trucks in Texas, completely south of like Waco area or something like that. So, you know, for those of us like myself who live on a horse ranch and have horses and cattle, it's a little bit different thing. We have to winterize everything. We're chasing things. I already have my coveralls and boots by the back door, my mallets to bust the water troughs, and we're ready to rock and roll. With that being said, I hope everybody is being safe. It was a tough decision that we talked back and forth about what we were looking at to have church, to still try to have it. And we know that our faithful, our church faithful, our faithful saints out there would trek and make the decision to come to church, rain, snow, sleet, and hell, whatever it would, they were going to make it. So we figured it was probably in everybody's best interest to do it this way. And it just so happened that a week ago, we decided to build this little podcast studio down here at the church.
For such a time as this.
Had no clue. We thought it was going to be for our sermon companion, our life group companion podcast, and our other Daily Disciple podcast, but it looks like Reverend Disciple podcast.
So I think that we should be okay. I think after the recording today, if you're Monday, whenever your life group starts to meet, you should be able to meet. We'll send out the questions in the video here in a bit. You'll get to hear the sermon here in a minute. And so just be faithful with your online. Make sure that you've got your 10:10 journal, your Bible. You're getting ready for the worship experience. And we hope that you enjoy it. And we'll see you next week.
Be sure you like and subscribe and you share all this fun stuff. And as your worship leader, guys, there's a whole lot of really good worship that you can listen to online. If you're anything like me, I generally start my day with some of the YouTube worship playlists, and there's no better time than to get up and sing and praise to Jesus with some of your favorite worship leaders than right now.
All right. See you.
Let's do this. And you ready for your sermon, bro?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Let's go. You're watching this, then chances are you are caught up in the snowstorm or ice storm or freezing rain that is stretched out of 40 different states across our nation. So we thought that it would be best if we just kind of come to you like this, where we could just sit and hopefully at your house, if you grab your 10:10 journal or some other kind of journal, maybe grab your beverage, you'll be able to kind of just sit and then listen to the sermon online that kind of can keep you safe. We thought about being more safe than sorry. So what I do want to do, though, is I want to continue in the sermon series that we've been a part of on God's plan versus our plan, and how God's plan is typically and strategically bigger than our plan. Now, last week, I got to back up because I want to get a running start so that we can communicate. Hopefully you've watched last week. If you have, phenomenal. Then you're gonna remember some things. If you have not, I would highly recommend that you do, not because of the guy that's speaking, but because of the text that was done. So we're in Joseph's life right now. I'm Joseph from the Old Testament, one of the guys that God moves and uses in ways that gives him an ultimate plan, but that plan needed some implementation. So I'm hoping that you're able to see that God's plan, my left hand, and the implementation, my right hand, and in between those two, there is a gap. It's within that gap that I'm going to talk about today The gap is how long it takes before when God gives you his plan to the implementation of that plan in your life. You may know what he's wanting to do, but he hasn't really implemented yet because you may not be ready. This implementation, this gap between his plan and you implementing is what I want to talk about today. Now listen, I think I can do this. I think we could pull this off. I want to challenge you to kind of like, since this is the mic, what if I gave Joseph the microphone? What if I said, okay, Joseph, I want you to teach us what it was like living in the gap. He knew God's plan. He just didn't know how it was going to implement. So what if between the two, Joseph said, while I was in the gap, I learned some things. Because remember, I talked a little bit about this with you. I wrote down some things in my journal based upon R.T. Kendall's life and him looking backwards at 92 years old, and then him able to say, here's all the ways that the Lord was able to use me. I did the same thing looking at my life from Kentucky. Now, if I was in Kentucky right now, I think they're getting 12 inches to 18 inches of snow. So kind of thankful that I'm in Texas a little bit, but shout out to my Kentucky family, because I know that you're probably watching this as well, hopefully from your home nice and safe. And so as I was watching and writing this and starting to think about, okay, there have been so many gaps that I could have seen how the Lord wrote and how the implementation of that caused a stir. So what I thought was, well, what if we allowed Joseph to kind of teach us some things from the gap as he looked back at his life? Because if you haven't read it yet, and I'm hoping that you might, you got some time now, right? You're at home. Maybe you flip over, not now, but flip over to Genesis 49 and 50, and then you start reading some things in it about how Joseph can look back on it. Because remember, he said, you've meant this for evil, but the Lord actually made this for good. Because he saw it writing it out. So it's really going to be, I think, helpful to me, to you, as you're watching this, that maybe we can get some counsel from the gap. And if Joseph has the mic, then I want to look and see, okay, what would he tell you and me to do while we're in the gap of, okay, we see God's plan. It hasn't been implemented yet because I'm still trying to figure out maturity. I'm still trying to figure out how to obey. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to use God's plan in my life and then walk in such a way that's going to help me walk and be that 923, 365 follower. Now, remember what 923 is. Let's make sure that we review. If anyone comes after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. That's Jesus, right? So if I'm looking back, what would Joseph say to me and to you? So if you have a Bible, hope it's somewhere near you. You could push pause on this, go grab it if you want to, and grab it and open it to Genesis chapter 37. I want to give a small little review of what happened last week in the first 11 verses, so that when I pick up on 12 and start talking about what Joseph is going to tell me to do in the gap, you're going to be ready to go. Those first 11 verses, remember, Jacob has a favorite son. Jacob is Joseph's daddy. And at the time that we pick up on it, Joseph is 17 years old. There's one kid younger than him, and that's Benjamin. All the other guys are older. Now, remember, Jacob's daddy not only told that he was his favorite son, but then gave him a coat to wear so that if you saw him, he's wearing a coat of many colors, right? Or a coat of long sleeves with differing colors. Ever how the translation is going to be in the scriptures that you got. The issue is, when you see this joker coming, he's wearing the coat that says, I'm dad's favorite. And then he has two dreams. Both of those dreams are absolutely spot on. That's the plan that God is going to give to him. The problem was the way that he told it to his brothers, who already had some feelings against him. So if we're looking at it through that lens, he's telling these two dreams. The dreams are, you're going to bow down to me. Both mom and dad's going to bow down to me, and all of you going to bow down to me. And then he tells those two dreams to his brothers, and then they are ready to just absolutely whoop him. And so what I want to do now is pick up on it. In order for me to do it, remember, Joseph's got the mic. he's going to look back on his life and tell us, here's what he learned in the gap. So let me give you the first thing. So if you got your 10-10 journals, please, please, please grab it, open it up to today. You're going to want to write this down because Joseph is going to talk to us. All right. The first thing that I think that Joseph's going to say, now hear me, obeying God will make life more difficult for a season. Oh my goodness. When you decide, because I think that many of you are, I see how God you're writing your story. When you decide, I want to obey him, I love him. Remember, Jesus over in the Gospel of John says that if you love me, then you will obey my commands. So because of that, I want to obey him. Now, when I do, I want you to hear from Joseph and from Johnny, okay? But Joseph got the mic right now. Joseph would say that when you start obeying him for a season, not even knowing how the time frame's going to go, for a season, life's going to get more difficult. Now, I'm picking it up in verse 12. And as I'm reading this, I want you to visualize with me. Here comes the kid with the coat on that's suggesting that I'm dad's favorite. All right. Now watch what happens. Verse 12. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel is the name that Jacob gets after wrestling with God. If you remember, his hip is all dislocated. He's walking with a limp. Now it's not a swagger, it's a limp. And he changes his name from Jacob to Israel because Jacob means deceiver. Israel means place where I wrestle with God. So, and Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to them, here I am. And he said to, and so Jacob says to him, now go see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and then bring me word. Because you remember, Joseph was a tattletale. And Joseph was able to tell some of the things that they had done that was not good. So this just makes sense that he would send Joseph in. So look at verse 15 with me. And a man found him wandering, him being Joseph, wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, what are you seeking? He said, I'm seeking my brothers, he said. Now tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? So the man said, they've gone away, for I have heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went away after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Now, let me say this to you again. Obeying God may be difficult for a season. Watch, because this is what I think Joseph would remind me. God isn't always going to give me or you the details to his plan to help me implement them. Matter of fact, I also think not only is he not going to give me the details, because if he did, then I would start to make decisions on whether or not I would follow him. Like, okay, so if he decided to move me to Texas, for instance, and he gave me the details on all the things that was going to happen, then what I would do was I'd look at the details, weigh them out to see whether or not it was actually going to benefit me to actually do this. So Joseph is reminding me by looking at the gap, you may not get all the details. Matter of fact, most of the time, you're not going to get the details because watch this. I need to take the step of faith into God's plan. And oftentimes I get the implementation of God's plan because I took the step. Now, sometimes the seasons of difficulty are going to be lengthy. Sometimes they're going to be short. Whichever that it's going to be. In Joseph's case, it's going to be a little lengthier because I want to show you some other things that happens to him. All we've known at this point, he obeyed Jacob and ran after his brothers and found them in Dothan. That's all we know at this point. So that obedience, he doesn't understand what's coming. So let me show you the second thing that I want you to see in this as we look back at this gap. I think Joseph would say, obedience is not always safe. Now, I need to be very careful here because the safe I'm speaking of is not like the safety where we say, well, why don't you all just come on to church and drive on ice? That's not what we're saying. What I'm saying is the uncomfortableness of walking with Jesus is and will be felt by those of us in that gap. Because I love him, I want to obey him. And because I obey him, now watch, I need to deny myself, take up my cross daily, and then follow him. So listen to, watch verse 18 as we are finding out how obedience is not always going to be safe. In verse 18, he says this, they saw him from afar. These are the 11 brothers. They see him from afar, and he comes near to them. They conspired against him to kill him. Now, imagine that for a second. He doesn't know, because I think there's a little naivete to him. I think that maybe he's just thinking that his brothers love him because they're his brothers. And he's coming from a distance wearing the coat. So you got to understand, I think that the favoritism in this case was a whole lot more than the brothers could think. Look at verse 19. And they said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come on, come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. How much do you have to hate your own brother? Look, I've got an older brother, younger brother, used to whoop my younger brother, but anybody that messed with them had to mess with all the spray boys. It wasn't, no one got to mess with my younger brother. They had to mess with all of us. Only we got to do that. And here, completely different. Look at verse 20 again. So I'm going to start at the beginning. Let us come now and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. Oh, my goodness. But Reuben, thank the Lord for Reuben, heard it, rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood. Thank the Lord for Reuben. Throw him into the pit where there is wilderness. But he says, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, and the robe of many colors. They made sure that you understood that he was wearing the favoritism from Pop. The robe of many colors that he wore. Look at verse 24. And they took him, threw him into the pit. The pit was empty and there was no water in it. I want to make sure you get this. Sometimes that God's plan for your life is going to cause an awful lot of uncomfortableness to you. Sometimes the risk that it takes to follow him may even be more than you think that you can bear. And right there, I think, is where he has Joseph. Now, imagine this. Joseph obeying his dad, believing that everything's going to be fine. Picturing, taken from, stripped of his cloak, his coat, and then tossed into a cistern, a big well that was empty of water, so no water in it. Did you think, or do you think, that he would ever have thought that that was going to be his life? Now remember, we're talking about looking at Joseph from Genesis 49 and 50, looking back and saying, I can see how God was with me even in those times where, man, I felt unsafe. I felt risky. I felt my life was over with. I felt that I had messed up so badly that he wanted nothing to do with me. Now watch, because here's the third thing that I think I can learn from him. And it's based upon that very thought of him being thrown into a cistern. Obedience, now watch this, eventually strips away control. Let me just pause for a second, because I want to make sure that you get that. Me walking with the Lord, at some point, my control of the situation is going to have to come to an end. And if it comes to an end, that's where I think the work of the Father comes in, rushing in with the Holy Spirit. I truly, truly believe it. But far too many of us, because I know some of you, know most of you, just like me, I like to be in control of my life, especially when it comes to where I'm going, what I'm headed toward. I like the control of it. I want to know, give me some details. We talked about that. Okay, if these things happen, then I will do. Well, the problem is that God needs to, at times, push you to a spot where he can strip all of your self-control away, all of your pride away, and all the things that keep you from following him fast and easily. And when he does that, just like what he says, watch again in verse 24, they took him, threw him into a pit. The pit was empty and there was no water in it. So he does not now have the favor of his father. He's got the favor of this father, but not his earthly father, Jacob. And so now what you're finding is, as he's looking back, obedience is not as easy as he thought it was going to be. And it's going to require them to remove some of the control from his life. And bro, sister, that is going to be so difficult for some of you to walk, because you may think, okay, God's plan's good. Here's implementation. I'm here. And everything is good because it seems like the things that he's asking you are easy. And when it's easy to follow. You let him start taking away your pride. You let him start stripping away some of that self-control. Watch what happens to your relationship. It's going to go one or two ways. It went one or two ways with Joseph. It's either going to go God's way or it's going to go your way. Now, folks, I know that some of you think that you're all that bag of chips, but when it goes your way and God's not in it, it isn't a good way. So pattern your life after what you're seeing here. Joseph's reminding me of these things as he's in the pit. Now, I'm going to come serious, okay? This is the part where I think, okay, Pastor, I got it. I see that my obedience is going to be difficult. But I'm going to also now, remember, Joseph got the mic. He's looking back. And now here's what he's going to remind me and you as he's in the pit. Here it is. Unfortunately, okay, remember that word, unfortunately, people will sin against you. Let me just pause because the weight of that should land on us. It's one thing when someone sins against you that's not in your inner circle. It's a whole nother thing when it's someone that should be loving you, someone that should have your best interest at heart, someone that should believe the best in you, like these brothers. Well, they didn't. Matter of fact, I could see through the text. That's a little conjecture, but I'm reading it. I think I'm rightly that when they saw him and the coat, and they were reminded of the favor. Can you picture the face, the scowl on them, the anger that come across them? That they would actually believe that this would be the best way forward. I mean, without Reuben there, Joseph's dead. Thank God for Reuben, as I said earlier. So let me pick it up and let you see this. You can already feel that they've sinned against him, but there's more to it. Watch what happens in verse 25. Then they sat down to eat. So they put him in this pit, and now they're hungry. It's like, man, this almost is like, okay, they're just going about doing the routine things after they've done this devious thing over here. They sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh. Now, those that's very expensive perfume and cologne type stuff, on their way to carry it to Egypt. So imagine this, okay? Verse 26. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? So come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. And the Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. So I want to say this to you in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not sure, with February 15th or so. We're going to spend a lot more time on this. When someone sins against you, how do you forgive them? And there's going to be a lot more to it. But I do need to say some things about it here, so that when we're looking in the future and you're reading chapters 42 to 45 and you're talking and seeing how the risk of forgiving someone that's close to you that's done this is paramount, because you're not going to be able to look at the scriptures the same, because I'm reading what Jesus says too when he gives in Matthew 6, he gives me the Lord's Prayer, and at the end of the Lord's Prayer he says these words, and folks, there's no asterisk next to it that has my name or your name on it. He says, if you do not forgive those who sinned against you, then your heavenly Father will not forgive you. What Jesus is saying there is, folks, the things that I have given to you to do, I want you to turn around and then shower that on someone else. So grace showered on them, mercy shower on them, forgive them, love them. All the things that you feel from God, you need to then turn and throw that onto people who have wronged you. Now, please hear me when I say there are differing levels of hurt. There's differing levels of people and how they've sinned against you this way. I mean, does it get any worse than this? They have sinned against him in ways that, man, it's going to take a whole lot of counsel. But if you hold fast, I'm going to put a little pin in this one today. And then as we continue in our series, you have to keep tuning into it. As we continue, Joshua Leatherwood and Joshua, my son, is going to come, and they're going to do this a couple of weeks from now. So I want to say this to you as I'm trying to lean into this fifth thing that I think Joseph would look back at us and say, okay, while you're in the gap, this is another thing that you need to hear. Because I wrote this down and I thought, I truly believe that Joseph forgot all about this one until he looked back over his life. Let me give it to you. Here's the fifth one. Silence does not mean God has stopped working. If I'm reading this, and I kept thinking, okay, God had given this young man visions. And since I've read the entire story, I know that he has to go to Egypt, right? Because Egypt is going to be the epicenter where everybody comes to get food because a famine is coming. I understand that. But in this moment, in the gap where he's figuring out, okay, I got God's plan. I'm thinking he's going to implement it at some point. But in the gap, God is silent in the gap. But it doesn't mean he's not working. Let me read the rest of it to you. Look at verse 29. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. He tore his clothes because he thought that Joseph was dead, because he'd left him and the brothers were already ready to kill him. Let me get him sit. And he returned to his brothers and said, the boy's gone. And where shall I go? And then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat. Now just think about the deviance that it takes to do this. Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, dipped the robe in the blood. So I'm thinking, man, they hated him so much, and they hated the favoritism that Jacob was showing to them, that they would actually take the robe to do this. I think that it's all connected. Verse 32. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, now imagine Jacob here, okay? His youngest, most favorite son, and he gets this news. And they sent the robe of many colors, brought it to the father and said, this we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not. The deviance that it took there. Verse 33. And he identified it and said, it's my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. So Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. That's what dad's thinking. That's what Israel is thinking about his son. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned his son for many days. That is a standard thing to show that he inside, it is tore him up. The tearing of the clothes is like something has so incredibly bad has happened that he is showing the world how much pain he's in. In verse 35, all of his sons and his daughters rose up to comfort him. I mean, they tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol, which is death to my son mourning. That means he's going to go to his grave, remembering that his son has been torn to pieces by an animal. At some point, before I even get to verse 36, at some point, do you think that the boy should have come clean? I mean, oh my gosh, to see how the father was in such agony, and yet they knew that he was still alive and yet carried on the lie. My word, these boys need a beating. All right, verse 36. Meanwhile, the Midianites, so it takes it from this to this. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar. Now, if you've read the story, we know that I think next week or the week after, I'm going to talk about Potiphar and his wife. Apparently, his wife is very, very attractive and wants to do things with Joseph that Joseph's not willing to do with her. Egypt to Potiphar, and an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. So remember what I said to you earlier. Silence does not mean that God has stopped working or isn't working. Let me remind you, if Joseph's looking back at his life, he would say this to me in the gap. Keep moving forward. I wrote a couple of things down because I thought, okay, let me speak for Joseph. He would say, if you're obeying God and everything feels harder, keep going. Let me say that one more time. If you're obeying God and everything feels harder, keep going. If you're faithful, but you're misunderstood, just wait. Let me say it again. If you're faithful, but if you're misunderstood, just wait. If you're carrying a cross you didn't choose, hold on, because he's not done with us. God from the gap is growing you in ways that you've never seen before. So obedience, because you love him, keep taking the steps of obedience, even when it gets risky and unsafe and difficult, and even when you're misunderstood, and even when someone sins against you, you keep walking faithfully with him, because as your relationship grows with him, you are dangerously close to getting to the implementation of God's plan. Now, we sang a song last week called Good Plans. And I stood up on the stage and I said, it's good that that you and I have and believe that God's got good plans for us. So we think that. But what if God's plan that he says are good? Remember this, I hope that you do. I said, what if his way of saying and defining good is not what feels good to you? Well, at some point then your obedience comes into that. My faithfulness of walking with him, even when it goes uncomfortable and risky and unsafe and adventuresome. So let me make sure that we're clear. We believe in this entire year. I've said this, oh my goodness, I'm going to go down swinging with this. We believe that you said, give us a year. Now, I don't care how far mature you are, how much down the track of maturity that you find yourself, you're obeying God in the small things and the big things, or you're just now starting out. I said, give us a year. And then when I say give us a year, that means give the Lord a year of your life and watch what happens. I truly believe that, Luke 9:23, if anyone would come after me, that's all of us who are watching in your house and in my house. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself. That means whatever it is that's between me and him, man, I'm denying that. I want to follow him so closely that if he's chewing gum, I can tell you what flavor it is. That's how close I want to be with him. So I'm denying myself and I'm taking up my cross, which means I am taking up whatever it is that he's entrusted for me to carry. And then I'm going to follow him. I'm going to do that every single day of my life. And it begins right this moment, because clearly Joseph, looking back over his life, is sharing with you and me, man, it ain't going to get easy. Sometimes it's going to get difficult. And when it does, and it will, or you may be walking through it now, just realize he's doing hundreds, if not thousands of things behind the scenes you can't even see. And all along, it's for one purpose. As his plan gets you to implement whatever that looks like in the gap, man, you're growing. So don't give up. So let me pray over you and over your family. And then I want to talk with you just a bit about next week. Father, I thank you so very much for those who are listening to your word. I'm hoping and praying that at some point, Father, the inspiration of the text of Joseph's life, of him talking to me about the gap, how long it is and my obedience in it, and how risky it is and unsafe and uncomfortable, even when those that sin against us. Father, I'm thankful that even in your silence, you're still working. So Father, in the meantime, would you allow us to lovingly engage you, to walk with you in such a way that just knows that you're in our presence, no matter how far away that we feel from you or you feel from us. Father, would you close the gap? Allow us to hear those words that you said, that if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow. Father, thank you for the opportunity. It is in Jesus' name. Amen. So as I'm signing off on this, if you would, you can click like, subscribe, share, do those things that are necessary for us to get this message out to our folks. And I'm hoping to see you next Sunday, weather permitting. And I'm pretty sure it will, because I think it's going to be 50 on Monday. So there it is. All right. So I'll see you all next week. All right. Thanks now. Take care.